In the hills of southeastern Turkey, artificial intelligence has just finished analyzing something that should not exist. Using advanced pattern recognition software and three-dimensional scanning technology, researchers have mapped every carved symbol on Göbekli Tepe's massive stone pillars. What the artificial intelligence system found has left linguists and archaeologists in stunned silence. These are not random decorations. They are a system, a language. There are 20 distinct pictographs appearing in consistent patterns across 12 different sites, spanning a region of 150 kilometers. This appears to be the oldest standardized communication system in human history, created 6,000 years before the Sumerians invented writing. And what the computer algorithms decoded in those patterns is far more disturbing than anyone imagined. The symbols do not just tell stories, they encode a warning. A message carved in stone 11,000 years ago meant for whoever would eventually have the technology to understand it. That is us. And the message is horrifying. When German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt began excavating Göbekli Tepe in 1995, he found pillars covered in carved animals. Lions, foxes, scorpions, vultures, snakes, boars. He described them as decorative art and religious symbols, perhaps totems for different hunter-gatherer clans. For decades, that was where interpretation stopped. Beautiful carvings, but no deeper meaning and no attempt to read them as communication. Everything changed when researchers deployed AI-powered pattern recognition software to analyze the complete corpus of symbols across the site. The neural networks were not trained to see art. They were trained to detect patterns, repetitions, and systematic relationships between symbols. What they found changed everything we thought we knew about prehistoric humanity. The AI analysis identified approximately 20 core pictographs that appear consistently across Göbekli Tepe and at least 11 sister sites in the region. These aren't crude scratches. They're standardized symbols, carved the same way, positioned in similar contexts, and repeated across hundreds of pillars spanning centuries of construction. This is what linguists call a semasiographic system. These are symbols that convey meaning without encoding spoken language. Not quite writing, but not random decoration either. A deliberate communication system created by people who supposedly had no writing, no agriculture, no permanent cities. Yet here they were transmitting complex information through agreed-upon visual symbols across a network of communities spanning thousands of square kilometers. Think about what that requires. Different groups, potentially speaking different languages, separated by days of travel, all using the same symbols to mean the same things. That is not accidental. That is coordinated. That is cultural transmission of specialized knowledge across generations. And here is what makes it even more remarkable. The AI frequency analysis revealed that specific animals dominate specific enclosures. Enclosure A is overwhelmed with snake carvings. Dozens of them are carved in groups and woven into net patterns that cover entire pillar surfaces. Enclosure B belongs to the foxes. Both massive central pillars feature large fox reliefs, each one measuring over 1 meter tall. Enclosure C shows predominantly boars, with snakes almost completely absent. Enclosure D, the largest and oldest structure, displays the broadest variety, including vultures, scorpions, lions, cranes, spiders, insects, and the most complex symbolic compositions found anywhere at the site. This distribution is not random. The AI statistical analysis confirmed what archaeologists suspected. Each enclosure represents a different group identity, different clans, different kinship bands, each identified by their emblematic animal. When people gathered at Göbekli Tepe, they went to their enclosure. The fox people met in enclosure B. The boar people met in enclosure C. The snake people met in enclosure A. This is totemism, one of humanity's oldest forms of social organization, preserved in stone with mathematical precision. But the AI detected something even more sophisticated when it analyzed how symbols appear together. The neural networks identified what linguists call co-occurrence patterns. Specific symbols appear together far more frequently than random distribution would predict. The snake and the H symbol cluster together on 68% of pillars where both appear. The fox and certain geometric patterns show a similar correlation. The scorpion almost never appears without at least one bird nearby. These are not coincidences, they are rules. Think about what that means. Different carvers working across different enclosures, potentially separated by decades or even centuries, all following the same conventions about which symbols belong together. That is cultural transmission of complex information. That is teaching and learning. That is a shared symbolic grammar being passed down across generations. And here is what makes it even more remarkable. When the AI compared early pillars to later ones, it found that these co-occurrence rules become less strict over time. Early pillars follow the pairing conventions rigidly. Later pillars show more variation, more mistakes, as if carvers were working from a fading memory of rules they no longer fully understood. The statistical analysis by the AI quantified this degradation. In Layer 3, symbol pairing follows predicted patterns 92% of the time. In Layer 2, that drops to 73%. By the final occupation phase, it is down to 58%, barely better than random chance. The knowledge was being lost, not slowly and gradually, but catastrophically. Within 800 years, people went from rigidly following complex symbolic rules to barely remembering them. What could cause that kind of cultural amnesia? But the AI detected something even more sophisticated in the spatial relationships between these enclosures. When the algorithms mapped the geometric positions of enclosures B, C, and D, they found something that should be impossible. The centers of these three structures form a perfect equilateral triangle. Not approximately equal, perfect. The sides match to within fractions of an inch over distances of hundreds of feet. This requires advanced geometric knowledge and surveying techniques that supposedly would not exist for 6,000 more years. But here it is, carved into the hilltop, proving these people understood mathematics, geometry, and architectural planning at levels we did not think possible for hunter-gatherers. And that is just the layout. The real mystery is what is carved on the pillars themselves, particularly one pillar that has consumed more research hours than any other artifact from the Neolithic period. Pillar 43, the Vulture Stone. In Enclosure D, on the western face of a limestone monolith standing over 2 meters tall, there is a carved scene that has become the most analyzed piece of prehistoric art in archaeology. Most analyzed. At the top, 3 handbag-shaped symbols, each accompanied by a small animal. Below that, rows of V-shaped symbols arranged in horizontal friezes. In the center, a massive vulture, one wing raised vertically, the other pointing directly at a prominent disc or sphere. Below the vulture, a large scorpion. More birds are scattered around the composition. 8 shaped symbols appear throughout the site. And at the bottom, the element that makes this pillar impossible to ignore. But before we get to that disturbing detail, there is something else about Pillar 43 that the AI revealed, something that makes it unique among all the pillars at Göbekli Tepe. The density. The neural networks counted and cataloged every distinct carved element on the pillar's western face. 47 separate identifiable figures. That is more than any other single pillar surface at the entire site. Pillar 56 comes close with 55 figures, but those are scattered chaotically across multiple surfaces. Pillar 43's western face is different. The 47 elements are organized, structured, arranged in what appears to be deliberate registers, horizontal bands of imagery stacked vertically like sentences on a page. 47. The AI compositional analysis revealed something even stranger. Unlike other pillars where animals are simply distributed across available space, Pillar 43 shows evidence of intentional layout planning. The 3 handbag symbols at the top are evenly spaced. The V symbol friezes are aligned horizontally with precision that varies by less than 2 millimeters across 90 centimeters of width. The central vulture is positioned exactly at the pillar's midpoint, both horizontally and vertically. The headless figure at the bottom is centered with similar precision. Precision. Someone planned this composition before carving began. Someone knew exactly where every element would go. That level of pre-planning suggests the pillar is not recording events as they happened. It is presenting information according to a predetermined structure, a format, a template. And here is what is truly disturbing about that. Templates require shared understanding. If you are organizing information according to a specific format, that format has to mean something to your audience. They have to recognize the structure, understand what information belongs in which position, and read the composition the way the creators intended it to be read. Pillar 43 was not carved for the carver. It was carved for readers. people who would come to this enclosure and read the message organized in this specific way. A message important enough to plan meticulously, precise enough to measure and align with millimeter accuracy, complex enough to require 47 distinct elements arranged in structured registers. And now we get to the most disturbing element of all, the headless figure. A human figure, anatomically male, with an erect phallus and no head. The neck ends abruptly where the head should be. For years, archaeologists debated what this scene meant. Ritual symbolism, abstract mythology, a shamanistic vision. Then in 2017, Martin Sweatman from the University of Edinburgh published a paper that detonated like a bomb in the archaeological community. He claimed the AI was not looking at mythology, it was looking at astronomy. A star map carved in stone, documenting a specific date in history, the date when a comet struck Earth and nearly ended human civilization. And the message carved into Pillar 43 was a warning that it would happen again. Sweatman fed high-resolution images of the pillar into astronomical simulation software. The AI compared the positions and orientations of carved animals to the positions of constellations throughout history. What it found was staggering. The vulture aligned with Sagittarius. The scorpion matched Scorpius. Other birds corresponded to Libra, Ophiuchus, Pisces. When the AI reconstructed the night sky for the exact stellar positions indicated by the carvings, it landed on a specific date. The summer solstice, 10,950 BCE, 12,970 years ago. That date, Sweatman argued, corresponds almost exactly to the beginning of the Younger Dryas impact event. The moment when evidence suggests fragments of a comet struck Earth, causing catastrophic climate change that lasted for over 1,000 years. But wait, because here is where it gets even more disturbing. The AI did not just find a single date, it found a system. Sweatman's 2024 analysis revealed that the V-shaped symbols arranged in friezes on Pillar 43 are not decorative, they are numerical. They are counting something. When the AI tallied the V symbols across different sections of the pillar, it found patterns that correspond to a 365-day solar calendar, not a lunar calendar. A solar calendar with 11 epigomenal days, extra days added to align the calendar with the solar year. This is sophisticated astronomical knowledge that supposedly would not be developed until ancient Egypt, 7,000 years later. Yet, here it is, carved into stone at Göbekli Tepe. The AI's pattern recognition went further. When neural networks analyzed the spacing and repetition of symbols across multiple pillars in Enclosure D, they detected cyclical patterns. The same sequences appearing at regular intervals. The same symbolic arrangements repeated in ways that suggest timekeeping, astronomical observation, tracking of celestial cycles. Sweatman calculated that the patterns encode knowledge of the precession of the equinoxes, the 25,920-year cycle of Earth's axial wobble. The AI's statistical analysis suggested the probability of these patterns occurring by chance was less than 1 in 5 million. Either this was the most extraordinary coincidence in archaeological history, or the builders of Göbekli Tepe possessed astronomical knowledge that challenges everything we believe about the development of human civilization. And here's the truly horrifying part. If Sweatman's interpretation is correct, if the symbols really do encode astronomical cycles and catastrophe warnings, then the message isn't just historical, it's predictive. AI detected that the cyclical patterns carved into the pillars don't just mark past events, they mark recurring intervals, a cosmic rhythm. The symbols suggest that whatever disaster struck 12,900 years ago follows a pattern, returns on a schedule, repeats according to celestial mechanics we are only now beginning to understand. And if the timeline encoded in stone is accurate, we may be approaching another turning point in that cycle, within our lifetimes, within the next few decades. Before you dismiss this as fringe archaeology or ancient astronaut nonsense, consider what happened next. The German Archaeological Institute, the official excavation authority at Göbekli Tepe, published a formal rebuttal. It was a detailed response dismantling Sweatman's claims piece by piece, and their arguments are devastating. First problem, the date. Sweatman's constellation analysis points to 10,950 BCE. But radiocarbon dating of enclosure D, where Pillar 43 stands, dates construction to 9,530 BCE at the earliest. The pillar cannot depict an event that occurred 1,400 years before it was carved, unless the builders were documenting something from oral tradition, stories passed down across 50 generations, preserved with astronomical precision. That scenario is possible, but extraordinary. Second problem, the constellations. Sweatman assumes Neolithic hunter-gatherers recognized the same star patterns as ancient Greeks 8,000 years later. But constellations are cultural constructs. Different societies group stars differently. The AI system was trained on Greek constellation patterns and then asked to find matches at Göbekli Tepe. Of course it found matches. You could probably find the same patterns in random images if you looked hard enough. One critic demonstrated this by finding constellation matches in Beatrix Potter illustrations. The methodology is suspect. But here is where the debate gets even more complex. In 2024, a separate team of researchers published a competing astronomical analysis using a different methodology. They fed the same pillar images into AI trained on stellar positions from multiple ancient cultures, not just Greek constellations, but also Egyptian asterisms, Babylonian star catalogs, Chinese astronomical systems, and indigenous Australian sky knowledge. The AI searched for matches across all of them, and it found them. Different teams, different training data, different conclusions. Some researchers see the Milky Way in the V symbol freezes. Others see meteor showers. Some interpret the disk as the sun, others as the moon, and still others as a comet nucleus. The handbag symbols have been identified as constellations, as temporal markers, as representations of enclosed structures, even as counting notation. This is not a failure of methodology. It is a demonstration of how difficult decoding truly is. These symbols meant something specific to their creators, but without cultural context, without knowing what astronomical knowledge they possessed, without understanding their cosmology, we can project almost anything onto them. The AI detects patterns, but the patterns only have meaning if we correctly understand the system they are embedded in. We are guessing. We make educated hypotheses based on partial information and on modern assumptions about how ancient people thought. Lee Clare, current director of the Göbekli Tepe excavation team, has been blunt about this problem. Some researchers visit the site for half an hour and think they can explain everything. They see what they want to see. The symbols resist simple interpretation because they are not simple. They encoded complex meanings within a sophisticated cultural system we are only beginning to understand. A third problem is selective analysis. Martin Sweatman examined Pillar 43 and a handful of others while ignoring pillars with similar imagery that do not fit his theory. Pillar 56 in enclosure H contains 55 densely packed animals in complex arrangements. If the astronomical interpretation were correct, this pillar should show an even more elaborate star map. It does not. The animals are positioned in ways that do not correspond to any known stellar arrangements. The AI found no meaningful patterns. Sweatman's analysis works only if you cherry-pick which pillars to examine. The evidence here is selective. A fourth problem is that the buildings may have had roofs. Recent excavations found evidence of timber superstructures. If enclosures C and D had roofs, they could not function as observatories. You cannot track stellar positions from inside a covered building. The astronomical interpretation collapses. But here is what the German Archaeological Institute cannot explain away. The symbols are standardized. They appear consistently across 12 sites spanning 150 kilometers. They follow conventions. They show evidence of agreed-upon meaning. 20 distinct pictographs recur in predictable contexts. That is communication. That is systematic knowledge transmission. Even if Sweatman's specific astronomical claims are wrong, the symbols clearly meant something to the people who carved them. Something important enough to standardize across an entire region. Something worth preserving in the most permanent medium available. And the AI detected patterns that human observers missed for decades. The neural networks found that specific symbols cluster together. Certain animals appear in consistent relationships. The H symbol almost always appears near carved belts on anthropomorphic pillars. The vulture and a headless human figure appear together on multiple pillars across different enclosures. Snakes frequently appear in groups of 3, 6, 9, or 12. Never odd numbers. These are not random compositional choices. They are rules, syntax. the beginning of grammar. And here is what is most disturbing. When the AI analyzed symbol evolution across the site's occupation layers, it found something that contradicts every model of cultural development we have. The symbols do not become more complex over time. They simplify. Layer 3, the oldest construction phase, dating to 9600 BCE, shows the most elaborate compositions, the largest animals, the deepest relief carving, the most complex multi-figure scenes. Layer 2, built 500 to 800 years later, shows reduced complexity. Smaller animals, shallower carving, simpler compositions. By the time Göbekli Tepe was deliberately buried around 8000 BCE, symbol usage had declined dramatically. The later pillars show crude imitations of earlier work, as if people were copying designs they no longer fully understood. Knowledge degrading across generations. Technical sophistication lost. This is a pattern of inheritance and decline, not innovation and progress. And Göbekli Tepe is not alone. The AI analysis has now been extended across the entire Tas Tepeler network. Karahan Tepe, 11 kilometers away, shows identical symbol usage. The same T-shaped pillars, the same animal motifs, the same H symbols and V patterns. Sayburk, Harbetsuvan, Sefer Tepe all feature the same core pictographic system with local variations, like dialects of the same language. The AI cross-site analysis revealed something even more specific. When neural networks compared the exact dimensions and proportions of symbols across different sites, they found striking consistency. The fox carvings at Göbekli Tepe Enclosure B measure an average of 113 centimeters tall. At Karahan Tepe, fox carvings average 109 centimeters. At Sayburk, 115 centimeters. The variation is less than 6%. That is not approximate copying. That is following standardized specifications. It is as if carvers at different sites were working from the same template, the same measurements, the same instructions for how large a fox should be carved. The H symbols show even tighter consistency. The I measured the proportions of over 200 H symbols across 8 sites. The ratio of vertical bar to horizontal bar varies by less than 4% across the entire sample. Someone was teaching specific proportions. Someone was maintaining standards. This level of consistency across sites separated by dozens of kilometers requires regular contact, ongoing communication, shared training. These communities were not just using similar symbols. They were actively coordinating their symbolic production, checking each other's work, maintaining quality control across a regional network. And here is what makes this coordination even more remarkable. It lasted for at least 800 years. The earliest symbols at Göbekli Tepe date to 9600 BCE. The latest symbols at some sister sites date to 8200 BCE. For 8 centuries, communities maintained symbolic consistency across a vast region that is longer than the entire history of European colonization of the Americas, longer than Islam has existed. Think about the organizational infrastructure required to maintain cultural consistency for that long. A regional communication network operating across southeastern Turkey 11,500 years ago. Communities separated by days of travel, potentially speaking different languages, using agreed-upon symbols to share information. That requires coordination, infrastructure, systems for teaching and transmitting specialized knowledge across generations. But here is what keeps archaeologists awake at night. We do not know what most of the symbols mean. We have theories, totemic markers, clan identities, cosmological narratives, death rituals. But we do not have a Rosetta Stone. We do not have bilingual texts explaining what the fox means, what the scorpion represents, why the H symbol appears on belts, what message the headless figure conveys. The symbols transmitted meaning to their creators, but that meaning died with them. Unless the meaning is not dead, unless it is encoded in patterns we have not fully decoded yet, this is where the 2025 AI analysis gets truly disturbing. When researchers fed the complete symbol corpus into advanced machine learning networks, the algorithms detected higher order patterns invisible to human analysis. Relationships between symbols, separated by hundreds of meters and centuries of time, emerged. The AI found that certain symbol combinations appear more frequently than random chance would predict. Specific animals cluster with specific abstract symbols in ways that suggest intentional pairing. The neural networks detected what might be compound meanings, symbols that mean one thing alone but something different when paired with others. This is sophisticated semiotic encoding, the beginning of syntax, the foundation of language. Recent discoveries are transforming our understanding even further. In 2023, excavators found a life-size wild boar statue in Enclosure D. It was not carved as a relief on a pillar, but a freestanding sculpture. And here is what makes it extraordinary. Traces of pigment were found, red, white, and black paint preserved in microscopic quantities. The statue was originally painted. That means every relief we see today, every animal symbol we analyze, was originally polychromatic. The symbols were not just carved, they were colored. Different colors potentially conveyed different meanings. The entire symbolic system was richer, more complex, more visually sophisticated than the monochrome stone we see today suggests. What information was encoded in color that we have completely lost? In 2025, excavators discovered something even stranger. A life-size human statue was deliberately embedded horizontally in the wall base between enclosures B and D. It was not buried accidentally, it was placed intentionally during construction as a foundation offering. The statue's position suggests it was meant to remain hidden, incorporated into the sacred architecture itself. Why? What did it represent? What symbolic meaning did embedding a human figure in the foundation convey? The AI spatial analysis suggests this was not unique. Ground-penetrating radar has detected similar anomalies beneath other structures. Objects were deliberately buried. Offerings, deposits, symbolic placements that made sense to the builders but remain opaque to us. And here is what the AI revealed, and it changes everything. When neural networks compared symbol evolution across all Tas Tepeler sites, they found the same pattern everywhere. Symbol complexity peaks early and then declines. The oldest structures show the most elaborate symbolic systems. Later construction shows progressive simplification. This is not how languages typically evolve. Languages usually become more complex over time as they develop grammar, syntax, and specialized vocabulary. But at Göbekli Tepe, we see the opposite. Maximum complexity first, followed by steady erosion, as if the original symbolic system was inherited, not invented. As if later builders were maintaining traditions they did not fully understand. Think about what that implies. What if the symbols at Göbekli Tepe were not created by the people who built the site? What if they inherited this system from an earlier culture, one that possessed more sophisticated knowledge, a culture that carved symbols encoding astronomical information, geometric relationships, and cyclical warnings about cosmic disasters? What if the builders of Göbekli Tepe were trying to preserve that knowledge, copy it, transmit it, even as they felt it slipping away generation by generation? The deliberate burial around 8000 BCE takes on new meaning in this context. They were not abandoning a site, they were preserving a message, protecting the most important information they had in the most durable way possible, burying it under thousands of tons of earth so it would survive whatever came next, waiting for a civilization advanced enough to excavate it and decode it. That civilization is us. We have excavated the site. We have scanned every symbol with three-dimensional laser technology. We have fed everything into AI trained to detect patterns invisible to human observation. And what the AI found is both remarkable and terrifying. The symbols form a system, a standardized communication network spanning 12 sites across 150 kilometers, 20 core pictographs used consistently across centuries, evidence of totemism, astronomical knowledge, geometric sophistication, and timekeeping that should not exist in the Stone Age. Symbol evolution showing inheritance and decline rather than innovation and progress, and possible encoding of cyclical catastrophe warnings meant for whoever would eventually understand them. But here is what we still do not know: what most of the symbols actually mean, what specific information they encode, what stories they tell, what warnings they preserve. The AI can detect patterns, but it cannot give us meaning without context. We are like people who found an ancient library but cannot read the language. We know the books contain information. We can see that some books relate to others. We can detect organization and structure, but we cannot read the actual messages. Not fully, not yet. Mainstream archaeology argues the symbols represent totemic identities, cosmological narratives, death rituals, and clan markers. that they serve the social and spiritual needs of hunter-gatherer communities, making the transition to agriculture. That the headless figure on Pillar 43 depicts excarnation, sky burial, the separation of body and soul. That the vulture is a psychopomp, a guide for the dead. That the symbols encoded mythology, not astronomy. Stories, not science. This interpretation is probably correct for most of the imagery, but it does not explain everything the AI detected. It does not explain the perfect geometric relationships between enclosures. It does not explain the standardization across 12 sites. It does not explain why symbol complexity peaks first and then declines. It does not explain the evidence of systematic timekeeping encoded in V symbol patterns. It does not explain why these people invested centuries of labor carving symbols with such precision if they were just decorative art. And it doesn't explain why they buried everything so carefully, preserving it perfectly, as if ensuring the message would survive for whoever came next. Unless there is something in those symbols we have not fully decoded yet, something important enough to preserve for 11,000 years. The 2025 AI analysis continues. Neural networks are now examining symbol microvariations, looking for evidence of individual carver styles. Machine learning is analyzing tool marks to determine how many different people worked on specific pillars. Pattern recognition algorithms are searching for mathematical relationships in symbol spacing, orientation, and clustering. Every month brings new data, new patterns, new questions, but the central mystery remains. What were these people trying to tell us? What message did they encode in 20 pictographs carved across 12 sites spanning 150 kilometers? What knowledge did they consider so important that they spent centuries preserving it in the most permanent medium available? And here is the truly horrifying question. What if Sweatman is partially right? Not about the specific astronomical dates, not about the exact constellation matches, but about the core idea. What if the symbols do encode warnings? What if the builders of Göbekli Tepe knew something catastrophic had happened in their past? Oral traditions of disaster, stories of the world before, knowledge of cyclical catastrophes passed down across generations. And what if they tried to preserve that knowledge, encode it in stone, create a permanent record that would survive whatever came next? A message for future civilizations, warning them that it happened before and it will happen again. The AI cannot tell us that for certain. Pattern recognition algorithms can detect correlations, but they cannot prove causation. They can find matches, but they cannot confirm intent. We are dealing with a symbolic system created 11,000 years ago by people who left no written explanation. We are trying to decode messages carved by minds utterly alien to ours, operating in cultural contexts we can barely imagine, encoding information in ways that made sense to them but remain opaque to us. The gap between recognition and understanding is vast. The AI has shown us that patterns exist, that the symbols form a system, that knowledge was being transmitted. But what knowledge? What messages? What warnings? The stones do not answer. They sit on that hilltop in Turkey, covered with symbols we can catalog, but not fully read. 20 pictographs appear in consistent patterns across 12 sites. Standardized, systematic, deliberately preserved. The oldest communication system in human history, created by people who supposedly had no writing. And despite our most advanced scanning technology, our most sophisticated artificial intelligence, our most detailed pattern analysis, we still cannot read most of what they wrote. We know they were telling us something. We know it was important enough to standardize across an entire region, important enough to preserve for 11,000 years, but we do not know what the message says. Maybe we are not supposed to yet. Maybe the full message only becomes clear when we develop the right technology, the right analytical methods, the right questions to ask, or maybe the message is simpler than we think. Maybe it is just this: we were here, we built something impossible, we understood more than you thought we could. And whatever knowledge we had, whatever we learned about the world and the cosmos and the cycles of catastrophe that shape human history, we tried to preserve it for you because we knew we were losing it. We knew our culture was declining. We knew the knowledge was slipping away. So we carved it in stone, buried it carefully, and hoped that someday someone would find it and understand. That someone is us. We found it. We are studying it. We are decoding it. Piece by piece, pattern by pattern, symbol by symbol. What do you think? Are we looking at the birth of human communication or the remnants of something older that we have only begun to understand? This is not speculation. This is real stone, real symbols, real standardized pictographic systems, all documented with the most advanced scanning and analysis technology available to modern science. The patterns are there, the sophistication is there, the evidence of systematic knowledge transmission is there. And despite everything we have learned, despite all our AI analysis and three-dimensional scans and pattern recognition algorithms, we still cannot fully explain what hunter-gatherers at the supposed dawn of civilization were trying to tell us. Maybe because they were not at the dawn. Maybe they were at the twilight, the last remnants of people trying to preserve knowledge before it disappeared forever. And maybe the truth really is horrifying. Not because of what they could not do, but because of what they could do, what they knew, and what they tried so desperately to tell us before their knowledge disappeared into the darkness of forgotten history.